Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. Guys, yesterday, before we get into this video, smash the like button, get those likes up, because this is going to be a video talking about what we were talking about yesterday. And I'm actually going to do a live stream on this topic tomorrow, and we're going to have a big debate tomorrow about this, because I really want to talk about this and I want to get as many of you on that live stream to give your opinion on it. So make sure to tune in tomorrow on the live stream. But basically, we were talking about Canelo Alvarez and Floyd Mayweather. And everyone was tuning in. Everyone was giving their opinion. Rare Breed was giving his opinion, why Floyd was great, and why he should be there. I even said I think Floyd beats Sugar Ray Leonard, which obviously a lot of the guys on the panel were like, they were coughing at. They were basically saying no chance. Floyd isn't as would no way be able to beat Sugar Ray Leonard. Which, fair point. Leonard was an unbelievable talent and an unbelievable fighter. Leonard was probably one of the greatest fighters of all time. So there's nothing wrong with saying Leonard beats Floyd. And there's nothing wrong in me saying Floyd, I think, could have won that fight. Now, what I do want to bring up, Nelson made a great point. Which at the time I kind of coughed at and I kind of thought, nah, I don't agree with it. Nelson said that Floyd Mayweather fought similar styles throughout his career. And today, actually, I was driving and I was actually thinking about it. Who did Floyd fight? Gatti? Corrales? Marquez? Cotto? Mosley was fairly old. Maidana? Guerrero? And he fought a load of guys early on, but later on. But then I thought to myself, that's a lot of fighters. Ricky Hatton. That's a lot of guys. That's a lot of guys with a similar style. So Nelson has a very good point. He did, however, fight Zab Judah, who was a very fast, very good fighter. But Zab Judah gave him a lot of trouble in that fight. Zab Judah even, I think, scored a knockdown, although the referee didn't call it, but Mayweather's glove hit the canvas. Zab Judah was a really good fighter. Floyd, and then in the later part of that fight, took over and won the fight. But I definitely think that, Zab Judah gave him some issues. Zab was in his prime at that point. But when you look at a lot of the fighters that Mayweather fought, they have a very valid point. I'm not saying I agree with the entirety of it, but Nelson's got a very strong point there. That Mayweather fought a lot of the similar styles. And here's the thing. James Deere, my good friend James Deere, said, he just made a comment just now on a video that I put up. He said that Amir Khan, why does Amir Khan and Floyd keep coming up? The fact that, Floyd fought Maidana. Maidana was the guy with the belt. Amir Khan didn't have a belt. But James, I want to say this to you. If Floyd was so worried about belts and he cared so much about belts, why didn't Floyd become undisputed? He never became undisputed. He never captured all of the belts. Why not? If he was that worried about belts. If I'm not mistaken, he fought Berto. I know that was his last fight. That was without a belt. If you look at the fight before, he fought Maidana, and then he rematched Maidana. When he beat Maidana the first time, Maidana never had a belt, but because it was closer, I respect that. Guerrero had a belt, to be fair. Yeah, most of the guys that Floyd fought had a belt, apart from Berto. He was always fighting at championship level. But let's look at some of the fighters that Floyd didn't fight now. Amir Khan, Paul Williams, Keith one-time Thurman. Mackay made a point about Lara being at 154. What do all of these guys have in common? Williams was a great fighter. Williams was just dangerous for Floyd, full stop. He was tall, he was rangy. He was just a great fighter, period. But look at someone like Keith Thurman. Look at someone like Amir Khan. Look at someone like Lara. What do they all have in common? They all have fast feet. Amir Khan has really fast hands, right? And they're not going in there to pressure you. They're going in to box. How many fighters did Floyd fight like that go into box? Because Amir Khan don't go into pressure you, doesn't go into, you know, put it on you. Like a lot of the Floyd guys that fought Floyd, even Oscar De La Hoya. If you look at Oscar De La Hoya was really backing, trying to back Floyd up and push him back and throw a million punches. And we know that doesn't work. Amir Khan don't fight like that. Amir Khan boxes at distance and he's very fast. He's a lot taller than Floyd. He's got the range over Floyd. Stylistically, especially at the age Floyd was at, that's a horrible style. And Floyd didn't really fight a lot of fighters like that. He didn't, like when you look at, and Nelson's got a brilliant point. He didn't really fight. And I'm not saying Amir Khan would have beaten Floyd because I think Floyd Mayweather was a genius, right? So that's not the point about whether he would have beaten Khan or not. It's the fact that he didn't want to go get in the ring. Because in my opinion, if I'm giving you my opinion, is because I believe he thought it was a dangerous fight. Forget about what people say about Khan, glass chin or whatever. People say that. They say that about Amir Khan, right? The fact is, Floyd never looked at it like that. Floyd looked at it like, this guy's dangerous. Because you can't sit here and tell me that Maidana was a bigger draw than Khan. Or Khan was a superstar in his prime. He was a big name. Everybody knew who Amir Khan was. Right? And Floyd said himself, years before the rumor of them two fighting, that the one thing I like about Amir Khan, he has a huge fan base. This is what he said, not me. This is what Floyd said. You can find the interview on Fight Hype, right? And he said at the time that I think that a fight can definitely be built between me and Khan. That's what he said. These are his words, right? But put that to one side. Like I said, stylistically, Nelson had a great point that Floyd fought similar styles. He fought similar styles. Miguel Cotto, another guy that likes to pressure you. They were all similar styles. There wasn't guys that were like Zab Judah. Yeah, I'll give you that. Zab Judah. Early on, Floyd was very aggressive. And he did throw a lot of punches, which gets ignored a lot. Early on in Floyd Mayweather's career, Floyd threw a lot of punches. And I remember a fight with DeMarcus Corley, was it? And he got caught with some big shots in that fight. Floyd was letting his hands go, but he was getting caught with some big shots, big shots. I'm talking big shots, and Floyd had a very good chin. But when people say he picked and choose, I felt like I agree with Nelson. I do agree with Nelson about that the fighters that he was fighting at the time when he said it, I was like, but then today when I was thinking about it. If you look at all those fighters that named, they all had a similar style. They were all relatively the same. You knew what they were bringing. And Floyd cherished off that. Like any guy that used to pressure Floyd used to thrive off that. Look at the Hatton fight. Look at even Maidana, although he struggled against Maidana, but Maidana was in his prime. He was at his peak, and he was just a very strong, big puncher, and he gave Floyd a lot of trouble. But if you look at most of the guys, and Floyd was getting a little on in age as well. Canelo was a great win, but again, Canelo was a little younger at that point. But that was a great win. He totally outclassed Canelo. Pacquiao was a good win. Mosley was a little old in age. But yeah, when you do look at it, you have to question it. And we question Canelo's resume, and yeah, Canelo. Listen, but I think the difference, and I think I kind of see where they were coming from. Even though I still will say that I think Floyd is greater than Canelo. I think he'll go down a greater fighter than Canelo, and I know some Canelo fans might be upset with me, but you've got to understand. I think Canelo's great, and I think he's great for the sport, and he's probably more great from a fan's perspective. And I think that's what Nelson was talking about. Amongst the fans, Canelo is probably going to be more appreciated. Floyd was a fighter that was hard to beat. You couldn't beat him that easy. Canelo's more beatable than Floyd. But the reason why Canelo's more beatable than Floyd, although Canelo hasn't got a lot of great fighters in around his thing, Canelo fights fighters that would give him trouble. So, for example, Canelo fights styles that give him trouble. Floyd, I felt like fight more styles that actually for me, I believe he picked Maidana because he thought Maidana was an easier fight than Khan, even though it may have not worked out that way in the end. But I believe he picked that fight because I think he thought that maybe it would be an easier fight than the Khan fight. But but Maidana just turned out to be really tough. Canelo, however, he fought Billy Joe, he fought Caleb Plant, he fought Alexander Lara, and Rebri pointed out that he felt Lara won that fight. But the fact is, you've got to give Canelo respect for going in with Lara, because Lara was a fighter that was a difficult style. We already saw Floyd. I think, did he fight Lara first, or I think he might have fought Lara afterwards. But the point I'm trying to make is that Lara was a difficult fight for Canelo stylistically, and you knew that going into that fight. But Canelo still took the challenge. You know, Billy Joe, I know Canelo's a fully developed fighter. When he fought Lara, he's improved massively. Billy Joe was also a style that's not great. Caleb Plant was also a style. That's why they gave him a little bit of trouble, because those styles were not great for him. And Andre's probably another style that's not great for him. But Canelo still fights those styles that are not great for him. You know, he's still fighting those styles. So you can't... And yes, those guys, Billy Joe and Caleb Plant, might not be as great as some of the fighters that Floyd fought. But nevertheless, Canelo fights guys like Canelo fought Kovalev. And to be fair, I know Rebri points out that Anthony Yard almost stopped Kovalev, but Kovalev was doing well against Canelo. Let's not make out like Kovalev was probably winning that fight up until Canelo knocked him out. So how washed up was Kovalev? Because Kovalev was doing very well. He went up to round 11 and he was potentially winning that fight. So what I'm saying is Canelo takes a lot of fights that put him at risk in terms of losing. Right? And Floyd was just, like I said, Floyd was for me a greater boxer where he was very difficult to beat. Canelo is more a more exciting fighter to watch. But Canelo looks more beatable. Floyd was like, you got to a point where you think that this guy is not going to get beat, man. He's not going to get beat. He's too defensively sound. He's too much of a wizard. You know, it's going to be difficult to beat him. You can't see it. So Floyd was a very hot... See, Floyd was a great fighter in the sense that it's very difficult to beat him. This is why I said I think he could beat Sugar Ray Leonard, because Floyd was a very difficult fighter to beat. And by the way, even though I think he ducked Paul Williams, Amir Khan, Keith Thurman was another fighter that I think would have given Floyd trouble, because Keith Thurman had good movement, he had good punching power, and he was a good boxer. Keith Thurman was a good boxer. But that aside, I'm not saying Floyd wouldn't have beaten these guys. Floyd would have probably beaten Khan, Thurman, and Williams, possibly, most likely. But the fact is that people will always look back and say you didn't fight them. You know, you didn't fight them. And that kind of, whereas like Pacquiao did fight Thurman. And this isn't about whether Pacquiao's greater than Floyd or Canelo's great. Like, the point I'm trying to make is that those guys are more fan-friendly fighters than Floyd was. But Floyd was a great fighter. And listen, he's probably greater in terms of his skills and ability. But the way he, you know, you could say he fought everyone, but the timing and that, and I can understand everyone's point. I still think Floyd, you know, it's going to be difficult for Canelo to go down greater than Floyd. But I think I respect Canelo for taking on challenges like Lara, like Floyd. He fought Floyd. That, like, let's be real, Canelo fought Floyd. When really, like, listen, I get the fact that, I remember Ray making this point, that when the best pound-for-pound fighter comes to you, you're not going to turn that fight down. Do you honestly think Canelo's going to turn down a fight with Floyd? Of course not. But the point is that Canelo was a star. He was a rising star. He was making a lot of money at that point. Yeah, he wasn't making Mayweather money or the money he's making now, but he was always going to get to that stage. But that Mayweather fight, although Canelo grew from that, but, you know, he took a loss. And he took that loss because he went in with the pound-for-pound best at that point. And then he fought Lara. Then he carried on fighting Trout. He fought Trout. You know, that was another fight that was horrible for him. Do you see what I mean? Do you see, although these guys may not be Hall of Famers, these are styles that Canelo struggles with. And one thing I will give Floyd credit for as well is the fact that when Floyd had a tough fight, or when Floyd, like, a lot of people thought he lost against Castillo, he would go in the ring and revenge that. The same with Maidana. He went in there and you know, people thought he had, you know, Maidana could have done something in that fight, or they thought it was a draw, and he went in and then gave him a rematch and beat him. So you got to give, like I said, it's a very, very great debate. But Floyd Mayweather is a special fighter and Canelo Alvarez is a special fighter. And I think Floyd's had his career, he's had his day. Now we should appreciate Canelo Alvarez. But it is a very strong, it is a good debate, because if Canelo keeps doing what he's doing, I know I've said Floyd is greater in my opinion. In terms of skills, I think Floyd is on a, like, he's special, right? Canelo can punch harder, but Floyd had, like, his IQ was on another level, you know? And in terms of achievement, Nelson might be right. Canelo might surpass Floyd. He may surpass Floyd, but people may not ever view Canelo as, maybe his own fans, of course, but I'm saying majority of the boxing world will probably never ever view Canelo greater than Floyd in terms of a skill point of view. But in achievement, from an achievement point of view, maybe Canelo can surpass Mayweather. Who knows? If he beats Paterbia, becomes undisputed at 175, who knows? Where, you know, what people may view Canelo, like, Canelo's going to be great regardless of what he goes. He's definitely going to go down as, you know, first ballot Hall of Famer. And like I said, he's going to create his own history. He's going to create his own history. I just think Canelo doesn't get that much respect. And I said this before, Canelo doesn't look, when he's fighting, and you've got to understand what I'm saying here, he doesn't look sensational like a Terence Crawford at times. You know, and I know people say, well, no, but you got to look at some of the stuff that Terence Crawford does, or an Usyk. But Canelo is unbelievably good at what he does. And he's just become a fighter that's, like, a bit like Floyd, just become very difficult to beat. Like Terence Crawford looks more beatable than Canelo. Canelo just looks right now unbeatable. Although he doesn't look as unbeatable as Floyd, but he looks very hard to beat right now. Like, people are saying, who's going to beat this guy? You know, Usyk, although he's great, I still don't think he has that unbeatable tag like Canelo. You know, people saying, this guy, Canelo, like, I don't think he's going to get beat. You know, and that's the power that Canelo had. Canelo's a great fighter. Floyd was a great fighter. I think it's really hard. You can make cases for both, but it's difficult. It's difficult. But leave your thoughts, guys. It's a great debate. Let's debate about this tomorrow. Guys, come on live. Let's debate about this in the live stream tomorrow. I really want to get all your thoughts. Guys, if someone new wants to come on camera, come on camera. Don't be shy. Message me. You know, on the private chat. You know, I'll let you on. I'd love to get new people on the thing, just to get you guys' opinion. I want you guys to come on and give your take on it. So leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Oh, yeah. Before I go, tomorrow I'm going to be putting up a George Kambosos and Tiafimo video. So stay tuned for that as well. So I'll see you guys in the next video, guys. Peace.